what if we did not float the naira? They're comparing where we are today with where we were in May last year. And I say that comparison is faulty. What we should be comparing is where we are now versus where we're likely to be today if we had not made those decisions. They're not the same thing, very different. If you find yourself as a country where you have over 7 billion of forwards that you can't meet, we're not sure what the net unencumbered external reserve was. JP Morgan had an idea of what it is, keeping our bank account for us. We're printing money, hitting like 40 trillion, right? So the end is so predictable if it had continued. And we've seen what happened to Sri Lanka, we've seen a bit of it in a few other places. So I think that there should be no debate as to whether those policy decisions were necessary. We can debate how those policies were done and what government is doing subsequently. And that's something where we need to see it as our reforms so we can all walk the way out of it together. So the question around fiscal reforms, the tax reforms, and what to expect. I'll repeat something I've said earlier today and also even yesterday about the fact that in our engagement, which is quite elaborate, we engage with a lot of Nigerians, from farmers to people with disability, with Nigerians living abroad, different sectors, and we quickly came to the conclusion that looking at taxation in isolation is going to be a wrong approach, a very wrong approach. And that's because there is what we call the socioeconomic contract equation. And that is that tax is a consequence of economic activities. So you must start the conversation with the economic activities, not tax. And when you do collect the tax base, you need to remind yourself that tax is a means to an end, not an end in itself. What does that mean? We collect taxes so that we can improve the life, livelihood, and well-being of the people. That completes the equation. And the principle from a fiscal policy and even monetary and trade is that any policy that distorts economic activities or that undermines the well-being of the people is a bad policy. Go and fix the policy. You can't fix the people. You fix the policy. So that's the angle we are starting from. So then to your question is, what are we doing to further simplify the tax system? We found unnecessary complications everywhere. From the number of taxes and levies that you have to pay, which is over 60, officially over 60. Unofficially, no human being on earth knows the numbers. We stopped at 200. We were actually counting. We stopped at 200. There was no point continuing because they are invented. As we're here now, someone has invented a new tax. I saw one just 2 days ago. There is a tax on dead people in one state. I think it's a Enugu state. That's a new tax. They just invented it. So we need to add that to the number. But we know for certain that that is the wrong direction of travel because it hasn't taken us anywhere for over 60 years. So we started with, let's have a policy framework on taxation, on spending, on borrowing, even a framework around subsidy and cash transfers. We should not just do things randomly. Like the solution to everything cannot be send them rice, give them cash. And then they'll say they did not receive the rice, they did not receive the cash, but the money is already going. So we have all of that. Then we said, let's rewrite the laws. We found laws that we are implementing today that we inherited before our independence. You just need to read the language and you know that they were written for us. So we are not a lazy people. So while we are amending those laws, then let's write brand. If you have a new country today that is called Nigeria, what should the tax laws look like? We drafted new tax laws, corporate taxes, VAT, personal tax, stamp duties, and they're all harmonized in one document. with the National Assembly now. We also identified that other than harmonizing taxes and levies to a single digit from over 60 officially, over 200 unofficially, we thought we also have to harmonize how revenues are being collected. You can't ask over 60 agencies to be chasing revenue. They were not designed to collect revenues. They won't be able to collect efficiently. They'll put burden on the people. You will not get the revenue to the government, so you lose in two ways. So let's harmonize all of that and connect even across to sub-national. And then administration to be more effective using technology and third-party evidence. So we have those bits with the National Assembly. That's the good news. The not so good news is we're beginning to see some headlines that even me are saying, where is this coming from? And they're so bold, they will say, Oyedele said, and put opening quotation comma, mark, and put words inside that I never said anywhere. So we are praying that those guys will have a change of heart, so they don't make our reform more difficult than it needs to be. Of course, for transparency, and the NESG conducted this study a couple of years back that shows that people don't want to pay taxes. Only 17% of Nigerian adults will pay their taxes. Only 31% of businesses. The others will do anything but pay. And their number one reason is they say we don't trust government. And we are not getting fiscal exchange for the ones we paid before. And they said even when we want to pay, the process is complex and the process is corrupt. 2 in 3 adults said they were asked to pay a bribe in the process of wanting to pay their tax. That's a contradiction. It doesn't even make sense for a country that wants to raise tax revenue. So we are very intentional about how do you improve transparency, not only about the taxes you collect, how they are utilized, as well as the budgeting. We've extended these efforts to the local government level. So we're having conversation now with the budget office to say, why can't we have a national portal? And there's something like that in South Africa. It's called municipal money. You go there, you find all the local governments, their development plan aligned with their roles in the constitution, their budget, their spending, and their audited account. We can do that. It's not rocket science. And then the last one is the question about how do we drive compliance. So we think that the tax gap is somewhere in the region of 70 to 75%. In other words, if everybody just pay the taxes that they're supposed to pay today, our revenues will be 4 times what it takes. Imagine if our revenue is 4 times and we don't have the budget deficit we have, even inflation will be down, right? So we're saying to ourselves, let's close that gap. Of course, a portion of that is policy gap, where we're giving waivers that don't make sense. Some of them are even distortive. If you have access, you get it. If you don't have access, you don't get it. But the rest of it is compliance gap, people just evading taxes. Beyond collecting taxes, we think it's fundamental for us to have a society we can be proud of, to ensure that if you and I are in the same sector doing the same business, you're paying your taxes, I'm not paying mine. If we allow that system to continue, then it's a system that is rewarding bad behavior and penalizing good behavior. If I don't like your face, I can price you out of the market and become a monopoly because I have the resources extra to be able to do that. So we're doing things like VAT fiscalization, data for tax, and so on and so forth that I don't want to go into the details now. But the assurance we'll give you is that we're very intentional with the design of our reforms. And we continue to take input from the Nigerian people and our international partners. We are learning from different countries to co-create a solution so that when we are done with this reform, we can say at least we have something working for us as a people. So I'll stop there. It could be. So some other people then run with it and drive the narrative. So you're playing cash up. So we're working on all of that. And like I said earlier on, we have a national fiscal policy that sets the framework for how we build trust with spending, with transparency of everything from, budget to spending to your economic plan, all the way from local governments, because what we're doing cuts across is not just federal government. Amaka, how are we going to get people to pay taxes who are evading, particularly the people who are the higher end of society? So this, you can imagine, is a big area of focus for us. People will pay tax once we decide that they have to pay. What we realize is that almost 90% of people who are paying taxes are guys who should not have been paying in the first place. So that's when we came up with data of 97% of informal sector should be formally exempted from taxes. People didn't understand where you're coming from. They're not the guys to pay you taxes. They're trying to just survive. So the way we are developing the system is, first I'll give you a very broad highlight because of time. We will use a primary data identification, which is NIN for individuals. We'll use your RC number with CAC for businesses. We're developing one for government corporations doing business. Everything you do that is an economic activity will be linked to that data, that ID. Whether you open a bank account, whether you spend your payment card, whether you travel abroad, whether you register a vehicle, you import items, even your phone, right? So I don't want to scare anyone. So when you declare your income and you say you've earned 2 million naira in a year, the system will say, how did you earn 2 million and you spent 40 million? You have to come and reconcile for us. If you take the personal income tax that was declared last year, 1.53 trillion is the total personal income tax we collected. If you gross it up, we declared income of about 15 trillion in an economy where consumption alone is close to 200 trillion. So even when you disaggregate and you take out government consumption and credit for households, it's not adding up. We have VAT fiscalization we're going to implement as well. You must invoice everything you are doing using a system that is connected to the government. If you don't do it, when you buy 10 phones, we'll record it for you as your inventory in the government system. Because the person selling to you needs to come and claim deduction. So they will tell us, we will not wait for you to tell us, we get it from the third party. When you are selling, each time you invoice with government invoice system, we'll reduce the amount that is left, but you will not know. You sell offline and come back and say your closing inventory is 2. We say, sir, your closing inventory is 6. Can you tell us what happened to the 4? So this system is proven everywhere. It has worked. We've been in Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and the rest of other places. So we'll do that. We're giving you the assurance that people who need to pay will pay. Last question I have is from Adesua. I know some people are not happy again. Local manufacturers, what do we have exactly for them? So let me tell you that we prioritize manufacturers in our reforms. Maybe the other group we prioritize above them will be the vulnerable and SMEs. And in fact, many of the SMEs are also manufacturers. Manufacturers Association of Nigeria are part of our committee. The withholding tax regulation that was gazetted about 2 weeks ago, if you go through now, no taxes on manufacturers withholding tax anymore. And I was speaking to a CEO of one of the biggest manufacturers, and he said, oh, you know what, I can't wait for this to be implemented. Because you know what, when we withhold your income and give it to the government, and you're borrowing at 35%, that's your funding government at 35%, how can you grow? So we remove that. SMEs, don't worry about withholding tax. Producers that supply manufacturers, no withholding tax. We've done the same thing for VAT. We haven't completed it. So there is the one about your manufacturing inputs, and then there's the one that we have with the National Assembly now for you to get full credit on your assets. Manufacturers are huge with assets. So you get all the credit back, which means your cost goes down. And then we have the company income tax rate I told you about, although not just for manufacturers alone, but clearly, our priority for targeting that reduction in CIT rate, for that to come down, knowing very well that when you allow industries, manufacturers, to grow and thrive, the economy grows. And when the economy grows, remember our equation that we started with, you have more economic activities without doing almost anything. Naturally, your tax revenues would increase. Thank you.
Dr. Adedeji.